your mind, lost
At the moment, I imagine people in Greenland are like, what? Why are you talking about us? No one talks about us. Didn't Trump try and buy the place or something?
Well, there's a gal that works out in Greenland. Her name is Q, and she's one of the part of the indigenous Inuk people that live out there. I mean, first off, their language is like, what? How many clicks did you make now?
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, I'll be honest, I kind of understand it because, you know, if you look at the native population in Canada, okay, which is really literally right next door to Greenland, it's all up north. You know, if you start going further down, you know, going towards like Alberta or go to Ontario or you go to Quebec, you'll have people that, you know, they have no idea what indigenous people are because they're in these massive cities. And then like 200 miles, maybe 180 kilometers further up, nothing, just indigenous people. You don't have that in the UK. You know,
we can't go that high up. You know, in the UK, it might just be England. You're never more than 70 miles from the coast.
Yeah, because of how it's shaped. Yeah.
Tiny little place. I was a bit worried when Brexit happened. They were just going to like cast us off like a boat, and we were just kind of go floating off into the Atlantic Ocean.
You know what though? My best friend, I told you this, she lives in Manchester, and I honestly, because of her, I've like learned to have like a lot more respect. If you really want to understand English culture, I'm sorry, fuck Southern England and Wales. Just fuck those assholes. They just give Britain such a bad rap. It's like if you want to really experience England, like, you know, meet people from Scots, you know, or Northern Ireland or like the north of England. Like, those are real motherfuckers. They'll really give you the English experience.
It's right. So I'm in the south, and
am I right? Am I right?
No, you're right. And I tell you what's frustrating. Obviously, no one chooses where they're born, but Britain, all the culture, when I was a kid at least, all the culture, all the news was always about what was happening around London or in the south. And London, God. Where I'm sitting, London is 80 miles that way, and actually the tip of Holland is less than that. If I could fly, but I can't. Yeah. I can't fly. But yeah, nothing.
You can't fly.
Not without mechanical aid, not without being in an airplane.
Oh, right.
No, I'm not on the list. I'm not on like a no-fly list or anything.
Okay,
but
let me see there for a second.
The BBC's been working really hard to like admit the fact that the North does exist now. So they moved a lot of their stuff up, a lot of their studios, and I imagine cameras and microphones and things.
I mean, as an artist, if you look at British history, it's all from the North. Most of it is from the North. Beatles, Rolling Stones. I mean, Eric Clapton is from... He's in the middle of England. I don't know where he's from, though.
Do you know, I don't know where he's from either. Actually.
He's from somewhere in the middle of England.
Thing is, England's all middle.
No, you know what I mean? Like middle. You know, like people say Sheffield. Like that's what I think of, like middle. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That would be a controversial view here. People from Sheffield very much consider themselves Northerners. The North starts just above, maybe 50 miles above London. Birmingham's the Midlands, so Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, loads of heavy metal. I want to find out where Eric Clapton's born.
Right, but that's what I'm like trying to say is like too weird. It's not necessarily like about it. It has to do necessarily with culture. If you kind of notice something, usually people that have had their asks kicked more than anybody else usually are some of the greatest people that have ever lived. And I think it's just the sheer wit. It's like, well, life fucking sucks, so let's just have fun. You know, like, what else are we going to do?
I think they have better community up north as well. So, do you know about working men's clubs?
Oh my God.
there's a brilliant program called Phoenix Nights. It was made years ago. So working men's clubs, we've got one at the end of our road, and that's the only one I can think of locally. So they are literally people would work on for this one. It's all the people who worked in the railways would go there every night, and they'd have sing songs and do all that kind of stuff. That shit died out in the south a long time ago, and it's still pretty strong in the north. So people who are performers have this sort of route into it. You know, if when I first started playing in bands, I had to put the gig on, otherwise the gig didn't happen. Whereas if you're near a working men's club, there's loads of really, really famous singers, like mega famous, who spent years in the working men's clubs, you know, singing along to someone playing a giant organ or something.
We don't have that stuff, unfortunately, here in the States anymore. I mean, very much like it's sad because, you want to think that there's hope because of how big this country is. But, I grew up in New York, and that scene is completely run and controlled by corporations pretty much. Like there's
Okay.
no ins and outs. I live here in South Florida, which used to have a massive underground scene back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. No,
Gone.
some of my favorite bands are from Gainesville and places like that. Gone. Oh,
They're all
shit.
gone because what they've started to do now in Florida, they started what do you call it? Gentrification.
Oh, so yeah. See, I live in a poor part of a town called Ipswich, and gentrification.
I know where that is, actually. Believe it or not.
Really, I'm
Yes.
amazed. How do you know where Ipswich is?
Because when I was going up to Manchester, I passed it on the way going up.
Oh, okay.
I never actually stopped there. I just was like,
it's sometimes for the best.
Yeah, and I don't know. I looked at the sign. I just thought of a liver sandwich. I'm sorry. I just heard Ipswich. I'm like, liver, rye bread.
We're not famous for much, but we have got a few famous musicians who have come from here. From the world of grindcore, there's Extreme Noise Terror, a band called Cradle of Filth, who are kind of a metal band.
Great name.
But the most famous person who went to my high school years after I was there is Ed Sheeran. So Ed Sheeran's from here. You know, the little ginger
Isn't he
fella?
from Manchester?
No. See, he grew up. So he was born up north, but he came down to Ipswich area when he was really, really young.
So he's a fake northerner. Damn,
he's a fake northerner.
He's a fake northerner.
If you get found out,
they hate it. Do you know that in Manchester, I'll never forget, they hate Ed Sheeran out there, bro.
Really?
Hate him.
Do you know what? Everyone claims to hate him, and yet somehow he filled a 100 capacity. Well, it was a park. It was a public park here in Ipswich. He filled it 3 nights in a row. So there's a lot of people saying they hate him, and then going to his gigs with a bag over their head so their friends don't see them.
Well, you know what? It's weird though, because she explained this to me because I couldn't understand this. She said it's a very particularly very northern thing that if you claim to be of a place and you kind of shit all over where you come from, you're not.
Yeah.
It's kind of also kind of like the Beatles, it's like people from Liverpool, that's what they hold on to while finishing 12 beers. And,
have you been to Liverpool?
I've never been to Liverpool, and according to her, she's like, I would have to take you. And I'm like, why would you have to take me? She's like, you're not going there alone. And I'm like, okay.
Not bad. I've only seen a little bit of it. I got stuck there. I misunderstood the timings for an event I was at. So I had 5 hours to kill. So I didn't want to I didn't get a really good look at the whole city, but I saw enough of it. I saw enough of the waterfront. So they've got the actual ferry across the Mersey, because obviously there's loads of what they call Mersey.
That goes to Ireland.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Well, there are boats that go to Ireland from there, but everything's Beatles branded, everything, as you'd expect.
You see what I mean? It's bro. It's when did that happen? It was like the late 50s, 1960s, and you're still holding on. Hold on as long as we can.
Some of the bits of it are really odd. So yeah, you've got John Lennon Airport, and I don't know why John Lennon got the airport named after him. I don't know why it was him. Maybe because he was the first to die, unfortunately.
I think Sir Paul McCartney Airport would have sounded a little better, to be honest.
He's like everyone's favorite granddad here.
He is. He has a podcast now.
Oh, bless him! It's like your granddad's done well. Actually, one of the weirder things I saw in Liverpool with regards to the Beatles, they'd made bronze statues of them, like walking along a pavement, but they'd made them about 10 feet tall. So it just looked like the Beatles were all like gnarly freaks that you wouldn't mess with. It's like, hey, that's why they did well at Shea Stadium, because they were big enough that people at the back could see them.
It's wild because, let's be honest, since then, have we gotten anything similar to that? Not really. I mean, we have the Rolling Stones. And kudos to Mick Jagger that's still up there on the stage, but nobody's really doing that anymore,
The thing is, my controversial view on the Beatles, like, yeah, they were great and all, but they were just the figureheads. They were, as a society with music, society sort of latches on to certain people as being the first big successful ones.
Well, I think it also has to do. It not necessarily has to do with their fame. It has to do with their dynamic.
Okay.
Because when you, I'm going to go back to the Rolling Stones as a great example. Okay, there's only 2 members that are still a part of the Rolling Stones. The rest of them, some of them are dead, and I don't know the story with the rest of them. But that type of friendship is unique. It's like, yes, people venture out, our lives change. We have different interests as things go on. 100% that's true. But what makes a great band is great friendship. Is you have these people that you want to hang out with each other. You have ideas. You could bounce it off of people. They can kind of interpret it in different ways. That type of dynamic, I'm going to be honest, people don't really, it's hard. You gotta communicate. You gotta be vulnerable. You gotta be open. You gotta be able to listen to what other person's gotta say. Because guess what? If you don't do that shit and you end up with Yoko Ono, shit happens, bro.
Do you play in bands? Are you in a band at the moment?
I've been around bands for, I play instruments myself. I've been around live instruments and live bands all the time. So it's amazing just to watch the different dynamics, of how some bands you'll have the drummer will be the starter, some will be the vocalist, she'll give everybody the cue and they just all right, let's do this, and they're everybody's oh yeah.
I'm in a band at the moment. Well, we've been going about 16 years now. We're called These Are End Times. Yeah. Well,
what's it called?
These Are End Times. When we started, we got a deal quite quickly. We got a really, really small label and got an album out fairly swiftly. We recorded the second album a couple of years after that, and it took us 5 years to mix it. And that was years ago. So we're not exactly the most proficient, the most prolific band, but we've stuck together for so long that we've become like our own support group. And I don't want to bring it down too far, but the guy Gareth, who plays keyboards and drums, his wife died. She was one of our, everyone else in the band's good friend. She died just before Christmas. She'd fighting cancer for a long time.
I'm sorry.
It sucks. It's absolutely horrific. But the band, I think, was a part of the support network that we all had for each other at that time. And that's because we've got through those really shitty early years of when no one likes you. When you're in a band and you first start, the amount of ambivalence you can generate off people is remarkable. And it gives you a siege mentality. So you're saying about bands that last a long time, it's because they get that kind of brotherhood or sisterhood, thing of just go, no, I've got your back. And we still have band practices now. We won't play music that much, but we'll actually talk about how our days have been and quite non-typical British bloke conversations about feelings and experiences, and it's really positive. So, we make fucking miserable music, but it's really positive being in the band.
I mean, on the opposite spectrum of it, if you look at even, because the punk rock scene, I'm sorry, Americans, punk rock scene started in the UK. I'm gonna say it right now. It did. It honestly, like, I mean, first of all, it blew up, but the interesting thing is, like, in that scene alone here in the United States, you had bands like Ramones.
Mm-hmm.
They hated each other. They hated each other. But the crazy thing is that, like, the reason that they stuck together was, like, they treated it like a business.
Mm.
And they made music like a business. Now, they made amazing albums, and I love their music. Is that the best way for a band? Personally, I don't think so. I think, like, it can work for some people. I mean, to be honest, like, the Ramones ending is kind of fucking miserable. Like, one band member stopped talking, the other one didn't even show up to their funeral, and then died a few years later, and then, like, nobody showed up. I'm just like, ouch.
See, that's why I'm quite happy that my own musical career has been untroubled by success. Success has not come knocking, and we're all still friends. Because you get the thing is, we've been really open about stuff from the start. So, like, the music's written by the guitarist. He put the band together, and a few years ago we got a sync offer. So, a sync offer is when they're going to use your music on a movie or a advert. And I was like, wow, that would be really useful to get some money in. And the guitarist was like, well, I'll get money for it because I wrote it. You guys won't get any. And it's that kind of thing that if people aren't good at communicating with each other, that kills a band. But we all just kind of went, fuck, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's your name on the, we call it PRS here. I don't know what the equivalent is in America, but you'd like the documents you fill out so you get your royalties from radio and stuff.
We call it a copyright.
Yeah,
so like
that
copyright
kind of
infringement. Yeah.
So, but here you have to. You pay. There's an organisation called PRS, Performing Rights Society, and you join as a musician. It costs £100 to join, and then you're a member for life. And they collect the royalties from the radio stations or anywhere else using your music, including, bizarrely, you can collect royalties for playing your own music live. So I do a ton of solo stuff as well, and at the end of gigs in proper venues, you have to write down what songs you've done so that they can hand the report in. And yeah, I get paid for playing my own music, which seems like a ridiculous, not a lot of money, but it does seem like a strange thing to me. Because I was like, okay, I'll just go out and tour loads, and I get like $4 a show or something for royalties.
Well, if you notice something here in the United States, a lot of artists that tour, they tour a lot, and reason being is they don't make a lot of money from the venues. They make a lot of money from advertisements. So they get sponsors. So a lot of artists, when they go to live venues, if you ever notice, obviously when you go to stadiums and things, you can see all those ads, and like some of them are on digital. A lot of the times artists, they get sponsored by those companies because if they just came to the venue, they don't make enough money.
Never really considered why you see that. Now I work in the world of sponsorship a little tiny bit. I've got a client who's in that world, and I always I'd like to think that. So you're talking about the Rolling Stones. Who the perfect sponsor would be like?
Pepsi Cola.
Oh, see, I was going to say adult diapers.
Or the new Adam and Eve product, Jaggers Beware.
Nice.
The brand new vibrator comes in 6 beautiful colors. British Racing Red.
So what would the Foo Fighters be? I don't know. I can't really talk shit about Foo Fighters. I'm not a huge fan, but they're one of those bands. I think, they've slogged it. Same thing. They've been through thick and thin, but they've remained tight. So yeah, I don't want to pick too much up on there. Red Hot Chili Peppers would be like tanning oil or something.
I've had the same kind of thing with U2 as well. I mean, they're great. I have such a hard time with bands that are so famous and like their music is just like worshipped as if it's like a god.
Yeah.
I can't, and it's, I wonder to myself sometimes, like, is it the artist that's doing that on purpose? And I'll tell you why. sometimes when you hear like lyrics or how a song is being made, sometimes when it's too simplistic or it's just the way that it's being created, it kind of feels like, are you trying to make a one-hit wonder? Because this kind of feels like a one-hit wonder, and then it just keeps on going. It's just one-hit wonder after the other, and you're like, how do you keep doing this?
If I was a real skeptic, I'd say that the bands that do that successfully are they've got a formula, they've built a formula. So, like, J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter, her formula was take a little bit from Star Wars, take a little bit from Lord of the Rings, take a little bit from, lots of different places.
Do you know what's crazy? Do you know how much stuff she took from the like Jewish culture?
No, really.
Insane. There was because I grew up in the Jewish community, and I remember there was a rabbi that he literally like broke it down. He had like a Word document, and it was like 6 or 7 pages. Back to like not just one page, both sides of the paper, and you just like, damn, this lady's more religious than I am. Like, holy shit. She was able to write 7 books of this? Damn.
Yeah, so, well, if you're going to borrow, then the Torah, I guess, is a fairly big book. It's plenty of source material.
If you think about it, like, you can't be a successful artist unless you take something, let's be honest. Paul McCartney, the reason why he's the way a lot of the times where he plays the piano and plays guitar, he stole a lot of that stuff from Chuck Berry and people from the 1950s, rockabilly, bluegrass, stuff like that. It doesn't make him a stealer. It just means that's where he got his inspiration from, and that's kind of where his music kind of progressed from over the years.
That's really interesting. So there's a bunch of people do that. So Madonna does it. Madonna finds out kind of, what's the next hottest underground scene, and she'll kind of latch onto it. She'll makes it sound like one of those fish that sucks onto things, and she'll take bits from it and think, okay, that makes sense. But McCartney has as well. Some of his early 80s or late 70s synthesizer music is really weird when you hear it now, but that was him listening to Kraftwerk and hearing whatever was new and current. And then, so like Hendrix, I think he sort of did that and sort of didn't. But with Hendrix, I would love to know what music he'd be making now. And I was having a chat with someone about it, saying, I wonder what sort of guitar music he'd be making. He said, no, Hendrix would be making drum and bass. Yeah, he'd be doing like dubstep or something. He wouldn't still be playing guitar. He'd be inventing something wild.
Yeah, he probably, more than likely, also he probably would create his own electric bass company. I know people might think that's crazy, but if you really think about it, because bass today, this is just bananas. The electric basses today are insane. They make ones now where they have basically programming on them. So you plug them in to your amp, your equipment, and you can just go through the entire list. And this one instrument turned into like 75.
Really? I've got three basses, and
right. It's just it's crazy the amount of technology we have these days for instruments.
It is. So the guitarist in one of my other bands, a band called Mondacrim Ligo, he's just bought a Kemper. And I can't really wrap my head around it because I'm a bassist. I've spent 30 years stood in front of a big stack like that, which is why my hearing's not great.
That's why we have headphones, people.
Exactly, yeah. This microphone's actually really turned up to help my ears. But for me, being on stage, just playing bass and having my clothes flap around with the volume and just kind of feeling the groove of it. Hey, into the groove of it.
No pun intended.
So the idea of just having a little box. I've got friends in bands, a couple of bands I know. They have kind of silent rehearsals. So they go into the rehearsal room and the drummer must be the only one they can actually hear, but all the rest of them, they're just all connected up with virtual amps. They all have in-ear monitors and they have an app on their phone so that they can decide how much they want to hear of the other people in the ping. And yeah, it sounds efficient and their neighbours probably appreciate it, but I don't think I couldn't get on with that. How do you feedback a guitar when it's like when there's no amp?
Well, you have Great example of that was Brian Eno. I mean, he
He's
figured
also
out
from here. He's also from here, from Ipswich.
he figured out in the 7. I mean, he was the first one to use a computer.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the first ones to use a computer. But I remember I was watching an interview and he said something very interesting. He says, as the computer programs progressed throughout the 80s and 90s, he realized something really incredible. He said, you can take something really organic, create something artificial. The artificial essence of it gives you that organic feel. You know, like the crack or the hiss or the repercussion or the reverb, you know, or the distortion that comes off of it, playing off of that. And you could almost like in itself make something completely new. You know, I respect that because it's coming from somebody that he needed an entire fucking room to do the bullshit he did. So I
Yeah.
respect the man because like he actually knows like what it takes to go from that to now it's just a fucking iMac and
Well,
an aux cable and that.
well that's
Right.
what I use
Yeah.
on stage. So, you know, I go out, record sounds just on my phone now and then run them through a sampler and, hey, that's a set. But for me, the context is really, really simple because I've seen other people do it. What amazes me about Brian Eno,
Oh my god, the man's
he
a
came up with that shit.
genius. Yes.
That wasn't, you know, I'm in groups on Telegram and stuff of other electronic artists, and we'll talk about how to do this stuff and how to use all this gear that I've
He's the
got sat
godfather.
in here. He didn't have anyone.
No.
He didn't have anyone to learn from at all. He fucking made it up. He created the blueprint, and that's amazing.
Yes.
And I taught his grandma how to use an electric wheelchair. His grandma, many years ago, it's completely true. Completely true, right?
Oh my god, I'm dying over here. Oh my god. It's like great conversation. Like, hey mates, guess what? You know Brian Eno? You know his nana? I taught her how to walk, how to use an electric wheelchair.
Her name was Nina Eno. And we always
Nina
knew where
Reno?
Nina
That's
Reno.
a song, bro. That is a song right there.
I'm possibly about to dox Brian Eno, but we always knew when he was around because his number plate, so his license plate on his car. Over here in the UK, personalized license plates are super rare. Like almost pretty much no one has them. But his was A2 space Eno. So we're always like, oh, there's Brian Eno going by. And
do you have permanent license plates in the UK? Because I know in England, I'm not in the European Union, they have this where you have your license plate is with that car for the rest of its life. You never can change it.
Well, you can change it. There's a market for them. So my parents have both got their surname, my surname, as a part of the number plate, but it's seen as being a bit of a wanky thing. It's especially if it's like you get personalized plate on a really old card. It's like someone trying to pretend they're really posh, like, hey, look how special I am. So it's one of those things.
You don't do, yeah.
It's no, my dad. I bought a car for my dad a few years ago, and he said, "Oh, do you want me to keep the personalised plate on?" I was like, "No, I basically live in the ghetto of Ipswich. I am not having anything that makes me stand out, kind of more than anyone else at all." So, do you want to know how I taught Nina Reno how to use
the electric wheelchair? Yeah, please.
So, I was at high school and went to. Do you have? I think you call them careers counsellors. You know, they're sort of, hey, what are you going to do when you leave school?
We call them career advice. It's hilarious. We Americans always have to be correct. It's career advisors here.
Career advisors. So
careers advisors.
When I was at high school, they said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be a musician." And they kind of went, "No. What are you going to do?" I said, "Be a musician." They're like, "Look, you can't be a musician now. If that happens now, I've got a child, and if they say they want to be a musician, they go to college and just learn how to be a musician because that's what happens now." But back then, they were like, "Go do nursing," and I was like, "Why nursing?" And they're like, "Well, you don't seem like horrible or anything, so you probably ought to go be a nurse." And when I was doing that, as a work placement thing, so you're going and trialing it, there was this old lady called Nina, and it turns out her name was Nina Eno, And I got chatting to her because I didn't have any skills. I just used to sit around the geriatric wards just chatting to people, which was really nice. There was like guys there, because I'm old, I'm a bit older than you, but there were guys there who flew bombers in World War II. They have memory. They remember bombing Germany. So this was in the 90s. I was doing this.
I can just imagine them just like telling you like a crazy story, and they just look at you and like, "Can I bomb a fag?" You know, and they just light one up right in front of you, and you're just like, "Okay, damn, this man went through. Want me to get you a drink?"
It's like, have you ever been to Germany? Yeah, I have, but I was like 20,000 feet in the air, and I had to leave in a real hurry.
Throwing bombs while they were shooting at me.
It's much nicer in Germany now. So yeah, she had to. She was very old, of course, and so she was always just sat in this electric wheelchair, and I just got chatting to her, and it turned out no one had taken the time to show her how to use it. And got chatting, and turned out she was Brian Eno's grandma. And she wouldn't believe that I knew who Brian Eno was. She thought I was just being super polite. But, I was like, I'm a musician. And around here, you definitely know who Brian Eno is because he's a local boy. So she got her daughter to bring in a photograph, like a family photo of Brian Eno. And she was like, this is Brian Eno. Are you sure that's who you're thinking of? Like, yes, the fucker looks so unique. You see what he looked like in the 70s with like the bald head and the straggly bits of hair and whatever. That is definitely the right one.
He looks like what's his name? The character in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Played by Richard O'Brien.
Hold on. Oh my god!
I know exactly who you mean. He went on to He went on to present a TV series in the UK for about 20 years called The Crystal Maze, where
Riff Raff.
That's it. So the Crystal Maze, they lock people in a room. Oh, they have them now. Like escape rooms. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those things. But it was basically like that, but on TV in the early 90s. And they were all presented by Richard O'Brien. Yeah, Riff Raff. God. It's one of those things you look back over British culture and you're like, no wonder we're so confused. You imagine as a kid, I grew up, we only had 3 TV channels when I was a kid. Now I'm sounding like one of the old men at the hospital in the geriatric ward. So we'd all sort of have the same culture. No one had cable. I don't think it even existed.
It's to your point, honestly, I had a friend that I knew. She lives outside of London. I forgot where. But she like introduced me like to quite a few British shows, like were from like the 90s and the early 2000s, and I'm just like, I looked at her and I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Like, there's these shows of like these extremely posh women where they're constantly drunk at work, and then they like try sleeping with their boss, and then they have to cover it up. And then there's this other show where they're all the way down in this basement, all the way downstairs. One guy is from Ireland, the other guy is
that's the IT crowd.
Yes, the IT crowd.
Now, you're not going to fucking believe this. Richard Iodi, the black dude in that, he's from Ipswich. He went to school there's about half a mile up the road there.
Bro, he literally is like the funniest person.
Do you know when they tried to remake the IT crowd in the States and they couldn't find anyone better than Richard Iodi, so they just had him in it again. He just got paid twice.
Are you
hey,
serious?
This series you made in the UK? They're like, yeah. Can you come and do exactly the same thing in America?
British?
That happens a few times, actually.
It's weird because they've tried remaking British TV shows here in the States, and the few times that it actually has worked was like The Office.
Oh, the American Office. Once they're not bogged down by the really awkward, clumsy British scripts, it flies. And the American one's far better than the British one.
Yeah, but I don't know. I felt like the British one was a little more foul.
Oh, it's painful. It's awkward, which is a type of humour that people seem to really like.
You're literally sitting there and you're like, no, don't, no. Oh, you're just like, oh. It's like the video, like the short you get on TikTok. Just like, don't touch that thing. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
That is clearly on fire. Do not sit on it. Oh, he's sitting on it now. It's like watching, so you're on the motorway and you see there's an accident on the other, traffic going the other way. We call it rubbernecking in the UK, where you just kind of go, I'm not going to look, I'm not going to look, I'm not going to. And then people then crash into the people in front of them, and hilarity ensues, I'm sure.
Well, hilariously enough, like the most funny American comedy, particularly, Americans don't understand what highways are. Okay, even though we have hundreds of them, like some states will drive extremely fast. I live in a state where people are like, I'm going to look around. I'm going to text my best friend while going 80 miles an hour.
Right, so you've been here. So even our highways aren't that straight, many of them. First time I toured, we brought a band over from Massachusetts, from
those
near
corners, dude.
They were terrified.
I was in a bus, and all of a sudden, yeah, I'm like, what?
Do you know why it's like that? Because when the roads were built, obviously people have lived in the UK tens and tens of thousands of years. So people got really shitty about the roads when they were being built, and this happened to the railways as well. And the lord of the manor would be like, you're not putting that road through my land. So basically all British roads are driving round boundary lines all the time. Whereas in America, when they built the railways and the roads, there was nothing there. They just kind of went, just put them straight. But the railways are so fucked up. I grew up in a village called Wicker Market, and Wicker Market train station is 3 miles away in a village called Campsie Ash. And the reason for that is the local lord, I don't want one of those trains coming through my land. So because of that, the train station's 3 miles away from the town. And we used to see people, my sister lives next door to, but we used to see people getting off the bus in Wicker Market. They'd be like, oh, where's the train station? They're like, okay, well, buy yourself some sandwiches from that shop there. Oh, looks like you've got stout footwear on. That's good. Start walking in that direction, and after about an hour and a half, you'll get there.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I grew up in New York, and I lived a little bit in the city. So I grew up outside of the city. So like, like on the other side of the pond, basically. We have the Hudson River, and people are always like fascinated with the subway system in New York City. I live there, okay? Outside of Manhattan, it is insane, okay? Because in New York, they didn't have one company that opened up the MTA. No. They had dozens of companies. They're like, you know what? Let me put a train here because I want to. Let me put another train here because I want to do. And now what happens is in New York, this is insane. You have express trains that would get you a place faster, but doesn't stop by your stop, but it stops 2 stops after your stop. So you could go to that stop, and then you have to walk like a 20-minute walk to get to your stop. But then you could take the regular train, and then it takes 20 minutes more, but you don't have to walk.
Right. Sounds really complicated.
Then there's trains that don't intersect. So you have to take the train, get off, walk a few blocks, go down the station, then take the next train going the other direction.
So what's it like? Have you been on the Underground in London?
Yes.
So you practically turn into a Morlock. You're like a cave dweller. You can be down there so long. But it really confuses your mind map of the place. Just so you liked it.
I did like it. I went first to Glasgow, and then not Glasgow. The other airport. There's Heathrow, and then
it's Heathrow, Stansted, Gatwick, and Luton. Yeah.
So I went to Gatwick, and then when I got to Gatwick, I had to get out of the airport, and I had to take the train to get to the station so I can take the next train to Manchester. And I personally, as a person, like, I've been in Europe, I've been in the UK. I like the trains better over there than here in the States. It's more comfortable. It's an easier ride. Like, even the trams in Manchester were fantastic. Like, fuck the buses. Cool. I'm taking the trams. I don't.
God, Matt. The trains. They're not bad. They used to be a lot worse, because we were still running trains from the 1950s, relatively recently,
God.
and they smelt like it. And the worst ones, they called them slam door trains or suicide trains, because each row of seats were benches facing each other like that. So your knee, every journey, your knee is in someone's crotch. The person in front, you're like tessellated like that.
I mean,
and then
for some gay men, that is a dream come true. I'm just saying.
But then the door was at the end of the bench. So when you stopped, there was no central locking. You could just open the doors and step out when the train was going 120 miles an hour or whatever. But you had to like a rugby scrum, or like a it's like to get off the train. You'd be like accidentally kind of committing some sort of sexual discourtesy to your person next to you just because you want to get off the train. But I like the London Underground. It's always warm. It sucks in this middle of summer when it's raining. The London Underground is like walking around in someone's armpit. It's bad.
My big mistake. I've only been to England in the winter. I went to Manchester in February, like a genius.
Yeah.
She kept on telling me, she's like, it's gonna be cold. And I'm like, it'll be fine. It's like, it's gonna be cold. And I'm like, I got there. I wore underclothes, overalls, long sleeves, a jacket, and a coat, and a pair of boots, and 2 pairs of socks, and I was still cold.
Wind slices through you, doesn't it? So your friend in Manchester, is she native? Is she always lived in Manchester?
Yeah. She's native.
When you were going out wearing 3 coats and all the clothes you brought in a suitcase, was she going out without a coat?
She loves dungarees.
Okay.
Or like just wearing like just a pair of trousers and a jumper, and like that's it. And then she'd just wear a pair of boots, and I'm just like,
yeah. See, it's a mark of pride. You go further north to places. I was in Newcastle visiting a friend.
Oh, that's beautiful! It's beautiful out there.
It's an incredible
I've seen pictures
place
online. Oh my god, the hillside.
But because I'm from the south, and fuck the south and all that. Then the county I'm in has more sunshine and less rain than anywhere else in the country, and people don't shut up about it. I'm surprised Ed Sheeran hasn't written songs about it. But we went up to Newcastle, and while we were there was a blizzard, and ended up being like half a foot of snow on the ground, and it was cold. And I went out to the shop just to get some beer or something, and I was wearing everything I took, and I was huddled together and shivering. And just before I got to the shop, I noticed there were these 2 kids who must have been 6 or 7 years old, and they must have been sent out on an errand by their parents because they were just wearing pajamas. And they didn't look cold. They were just wearing night clothes. And they looked at me like I was some sort of fruit. Like, what are you doing wearing all those clothes? It's fine. It's like, we
have this thing out here where people in the wintertime will just wear shorts.
Well, right, so here it's the mailmen. I think it must be in their contracts. You never see a mailman wearing trousers. Ever. Doesn't matter how cold it is. Their knees will be like blue.
I want to just like buy a pair of pants and just like put them on the floor and just like, wear these, put them on.
There's a certain type of father as well that you see, and when it gets cold, he won't wear trousers. He'll just put a bigger jumper on. So like you see these guys who in the winter they're about half a foot wider than they are during the summer because it's not that cold. I just put another jumper on. Yeah.
I saw that when I was in Manchester, particularly with the drag queens out there. So it's bum fucking cold outside. Just shorts all the way up, like all the way up to the butt, with like 5-inch heels. And I'm just like, what? What? Like, it's freezing outside. Like, what are you?
Northerners, it's a pride thing. It's like, we're northern, we're hard. Whereas in the south, we're southern, give us a coat. Just, we want to be warm. Give us thermals. I had a friend who was in the British Army for many, many years. And he said he had a secret that him and his mates, when it was cold, they'd wear women's tights underneath their army fatigues just to keep warm. But they saw action in the Falklands War, and he said as they were landing, all the friends got together and said, right, let's be clear on this. If I get shot and I get killed, for the love of God, take my trousers off, take the tights off, then put my trousers back on. Because I'm worried about getting injured and being seen by like the surgeon wearing tights.
Just imagine the majors and lieutenants watching this scene, and they're like, and it's just like,
it's a cold and lonely island. I'm sure friendships were made and people discovered things about themselves.
explains a lot about the Spartans, you know. They're loving.
There you go. So all the Spartans had they have had like slim denier tents tights, they probably would have worn them. Spartans in stockings. There you go. How's that for the name of an album?
It's just weird because like I remember I was talking to I have a classmate of mine that's in the army, and he's like, the amount of gay action that's just going on. I'm like, it's the army, bro. He's like, listen, you know, soldiers got to do what a soldier's got to do.
Well, my friend was in the army for 25 years, and he's gay, and he left because he said it just got to the stage where there was a lot of talk, as there has been in the States, a lot of talk about kind of being gay in the military, and he was like, I'm just out. And about 2 months after he left, that in the UK they basically officially said, look, we couldn't give a shit if you're gay, because why would we? What's that got to do with anything at all?
I mean,
like,
the Navy.
Fuck, I could have stayed.
I mean, the Navy's been gay since the day it's been created. So I just, you know, it shouldn't. I don't know. It's just it's a weird factor because there's this almost like stereotype. You know, even particularly when you deal with gay women, you know, like lesbians. A lot, like I'll give you a great example. In Israel, I have family that lives there. In the army, in particular, a lot of their snipers, they're women.
Are they really?
Yeah, a lot of their bombers, they're women. A lot of their intelligence operators, women. And some of these ladies, if you meet them, Jesus fucking Christ, they will kill you in your sleep and you won't even know it. You know, but it's just a sense of resilience. That's what it is. You know, you're living in a world where it's every man for himself, and the only person that can protect you is you. So what are you going to do if you're the only person that can protect yourself?
Be tough. Be a tough Israeli lesbian. Don't clip that bit. That bit in isolation would be like absolutely awful to like go on a social media. Like TikTok.
You know what,
we're speaking to Andrew
what?
Culture.
Listen. Lesbian Israeli army woman tattoo is not a bad idea. Right?
Again, I'd go see that band. If that was on the lineup, I'd go see that band.
Imagine them all just wearing their like army uniform on stage, you know? That would be
I got in big trouble years ago. We were playing a Welsh working men's club, so the Welsh Valleys, and we played there before.
And you didn't expect to get in trouble before you heard that it was a Welsh men's club? Okay.
Well, no, because the time we went before, we took this band from Boston, and they went crazy to have a band from Boston, from America, playing their working men's club. So we went back, and while we were playing, the support band we took with us, unbeknownst to us, donned chemical warfare suits. And while we were playing the last few songs, they came on stage, started jumping around, right? And this place went from everyone having a good time to like, American Werewolf in London, where the jukebox stops and everybody freezes. It was like that. And we were playing, just all of a sudden went, whoa, it's like a cold gust had come in. And we got off stage, and the promoter was like, you guys need to fucking leave now. We're like, what have we done? He's like, right, all the coal mines here in Wales shut down in the 80s because of Margaret Thatcher. And so everyone joined the military. And we didn't know, but back 2 or 3 days before we played this gig, half the town had shipped out to Iraq. So they thought that we were taking the piss. They thought that these guys jumping around in chemical warfare suits were basically saying, fuck all you, look at you. We had no idea at all, but we left very quickly. And I was like, should we apologize from the stage and just say, look, we had no idea? And it's like, seriously, you need just leave, just go. We had to sneak out of a back door. We couldn't even like go out the main entrance.
It's just, you know what, wrong crowd, wrong place. You know, like wrong crowd, wrong place. That reminds me of this is completely different though. The Three Stooges.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do a little research, like particularly on Iggy Pop, okay, this man shat on stage and threw it at somebody, and it actually hit somebody.
What, Iggy Pop did?
Yes, he shat on stage.
Right.
He shat on stage and threw it at somebody. He cut himself open while on stage.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, out of all of the things that people have done on stage, you know, urination, vomiting, shatting, like chemical warfare suits.
Yes, it could have been worse. I mean, it wasn't like that we were, Gigi Allen. It wasn't like we were like Gigi Allen or anything. Iggy Pop's got his own radio show on the BBC here in the UK.
I don't even know how is that man still alive? You know, it's the same question.
Think he's probably thinking the same thing. Like, how the hell am I still alive?
I mean, it's like the same question of like Joe Biden. You know, like that can kind of be explained by drugs and science and a bunch of things. But like Iggy Pop is like beyond science. Okay, he is what we call in like the DC world as like Mr. Manhattan. Okay, like the man that to not be killed and shall never be killed. Like it makes no sense that he's alive.
So you're from New York.
Yes.
There's a brilliant book written by someone called, I think, Legs McNeil or something, called Please Kill Me. And it's about the New York music scene it's all oral history stuff. So it's things that people have actually said. And it's from like Velvet Underground, late 60s to Blondie in, what was that, 76, 77?
70... The first album came out in 78.
So the book is about that period. So a big part of it is about the Stooges. Obviously, they were from Detroit, but somehow there's a big bit about them in the book. And the amount of times in that book that people left Iggy Pop for dead, literally left him floating face down in a swimming pool going, oh shit, Iggy Pop's dead. And then like to the next day go, fucking hell, you're alive. And like stuff like that was like a daily occurrence. So I don't know if he really remembers it, but yeah, he is Mr. Manhattan.
I mean, it is kind of almost a sad twist of history, where we're you're not this, obviously. I mean, you're a decent human being. Like, you've gone through your shit, but not to the level or extent like when you deal with bands like the Sex Pistols and the Three Stooges. I mean, they were literally killing themselves every single day for years.
Yeah, no, I've been very sheltered. I haven't even seen drugs really. It's not even been a thing. I'm from the punk scene originally, like the DIY scene. No one had any money for drugs. Just apart from weed, of course. But
people forget, like, most of the New York punk scene in the 80s was weed. Like a lot of, I mean, yeah, blow was very big. You know, people talk about like poppers and shit, but like it was very taboo. You know, you had to be like in the backstreet crowds and things of that nature.
Poppers, what is, because poppers here is amyl nitrate.
Mm-hmm.
So is it same name, same thing?
Yeah, it's so what it was back in the day. A lot of the gay community were doing poppers, particularly for sex, because I mean,
it's a relaxant, isn't it? I've done poppers, not for many years, but you can still buy them in shops here. You just go and buy. They call them room odorizers now.
They're not legal here anymore.
Are they not?
No.
Still,
and they actually found out that one of the increases from HIV to AIDS was caused due to PCP.
So what's PCP? Angel dust.
PCP is poppers. It's the same thing.
Oh, is it really?
Yes.
So the amyl nitrate. So the thing you sniff, and then it gives you the biggest fucking headache you've ever had in your life. I didn't. I thought PCP was something else.
I'm pretty sure PCP and Popper. Let me make sure, because I remember it's been a while since. But I mean, that's honestly like the thing to keep in mind too is like, yeah, like a lot of people look at kind of the thing of the artist and history around that. A lot of it, in particularly, is about drugs, but the kind of the hardcore stuff that was going on with rock and a lot of the underground throughout like the late 60s and 70s was very different once the punk scene started, around like the late 70s and 80s throughout the 90s. Yeah, like they still were doing stuff, but I don't know. I don't feel it was as heavy as it was before. Am I making sense?
I think you're making total sense. It wasn't as life and death. I mean, the scene around CBGBs and stuff, that even with the Ramones, it's life and death stuff. Not really sure if you're going to survive. Living in squats, and squats are still very much a thing on the music scene, but they're all
two
very
different
nice
things.
now. They are two different things.
Yeah. Okay. So correction. We're talking about poppers, the stuff that you put up your nose. Yes, not PCP. PCP is the shit that we could talk about that a little later. That shit is. Whoa. You heard about that story of the guy in England? I think actually not far from. This was years ago. There was a man in England that took PCP, got shot 7 times, killed a man to death, and then was found in his yard lying there in suntanning.
Getting shot in the UK is a rarity, an extreme rarity. But
7 times,
that's insane.
But yeah. That's a PCP story. But anyway, back to poppers.
They were so normal. Don't see them so much these days, but I know I've seen them in shops being sold as room odorizers. But they've always got names like GHB, which GBH rather. GBH is an English police term. It means grievous bodily harm. So they sell poppers and they're called GBH. You just look at it and go, I'm not sure I want that. That sounds like it might be a bit much. Can you not just sell the one that says like a mild tickle on the arse or something?
I mean, it's interesting because like almost we're a tie of the industry almost is substance. Like kind of the way that people have been able to create music is through a form of substance, whether it be like, drinking, smoking, drugs, trauma. I mean, the list just goes on, but I feel that's kind of why a lot of music these days is just
It is. We've got a thing here. So I'm a promoter. I play in bands. I said that, but this town suddenly got really fucking cool recently. It's because a load of people my age have basically got their shit together. Because musicians don't tend to be well organized. Now we are, and what I'm seeing is a lot of the bands I was in when I was young and starting was because there was nothing else to do. It was like nothing at all. You'd sit around on street corners drinking shit lager, and that was about, and smoking bad cigarettes, and that was about all there was for entertainment. So we started playing in bands, and that meant no one ever showed us how to do it. So it was really ratty and really odd. And I've got synths and stuff, but I can't play. I can't read music or anything. Whereas the kids now, I mentioned earlier about me ending up doing nursing because I said, hey, I want to be a musician. They're like, no, you don't. Now you go to college and they teach you how to be in a band. But what that's starting to create, especially on the underground level at the moment, so it will bubble up, is loads of bands who are really, really good and very proficient and boring as hell. Just dull. They can play, they can know how to put a song together, and the music, all the gear's set up perfectly, but they've just got nothing to say. There's nothing interesting happening.
I don't know if you. I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts on this, but I think one of the greatest examples of this has to be Joy Division. Because I mean, look, Ian Curtis is a terrible singer.
But not the best. No.
He's not the best, but it's just I could listen to Inner Zone, over and over again, and it like a lot of their songs are kind of like that too. It's not because they're great; it's because of what they represent.
Mm.
You could feel like these are working class people that know how to pick up an instrument, know how to create lyrics, and they know how to make a song. They're not the best at it. They're not great.
It's creating something new, though, isn't it? Have you seen the film 24-Hour Party People?
I think so.
So it's a
Is it-
film with
Is it
Steve
about
Coogan.
the scene that was going on?
Yeah, the Manchester scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. That's just I only seen it fairly recently, but it was the Manchester scene that got me into music when I was about 13 or 14 because they called it Madchester, so MAD Chester, and it was all big baggy jeans. So Stone Roses and Charlatans and Spiral Carpets and loads of bands that on Happy Mondays, loads of bands that probably haven't existed for a while. But yeah, they're all in 24-hour party people. So I didn't want to watch it for a long time. So I didn't want it to ruin this false memory I had of something being so perfect. But I've seen it now, and the Joy Division bits I thought were really interesting. It's sad, it doesn't end well, but yeah, they've just like the desolation in early Joy Division. There's only a small little bit of Joy Division. Is so
Yeah.
stark.
It is. It is. It's what you're seeing is, I mean, a great example here in the United States is like Detroit, Michigan, where you have a place that is built by the working class, and then it dies. That's what happened to Manchester. Manchester, this city just died. There was no work.
It was all industrial.
Everything was closed. A lot of people didn't have any jobs, and a lot of these kids grew up in slummy and dirty and smog-ridden areas, and they had to create some form of imagination to keep themselves sane. Hence the name Manchesters.
Yeah,
you went mad.
Some of the inspiration that I didn't realize they had at the time. So, do you know the Happy Mondays? Do you know that band name?
I'm like one of those guys that I'll have that friend that'll put on that song and they're like, oh, this is Happy Mondays. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm just like, ah. But I haven't like particularly listened to their music on my own, no.
So their influence was all Afrobeat. So Fela Kuti and stuff that God knows how in the 80s they even knew what that music was. I'm not so good with band names either, which I used to have my own record shop, and there's certain times I think I'm not sure I'm the right person to run a record shop because people would come in and go, have you heard of this band? I'm like, no, they all just blend together now. Like look behind for all the CDs rather than all the vinyl was. It's like I've read so many band names today, they've all just sort of become blurred and mushed together.
Yeah, it's especially like there are some that you have to like. A great example is there was one. Not new wave. It's not Depeche Mode. I forgot the name. They're from that like electro scene as well. And I don't understand. Sometimes all these names I'm just like, why are you trying to hurt my brain? Just give me letters, just call yourself 3, okay?
We are band's number 47. Okay, it's your turn to be at the top of the charts next week. Brilliant.
Number 47 is charting number 52. Wait, so 47 is not 52? Oh my god!
Maybe that would be more confusing, but
yeah.
And then because of Google, obviously bands don't spell their names correctly now. So there's a band that's really popular here called Churches, but it's spelled CHVV. God, I can't spell myself. CHVVCHES. So churches. But it's also that people can get found because there's some band names that there's a really cool band that I think they're going to hit the States fairly soon called Fat Dog. It's just a terrible band name. Fantastic band, but what a crap name. Because if you just kind of Google it's not the worst one. I was going to say you Google Fat Dog and then you do an image search, you're just going to see loads of fat dogs. One of my favourite bands when I was a teenager was a band, they were signed to Cherry Red, so a really cool old punk label, and the band name was Prolapse. And when the internet got really popular, in the early 2000s. I remember going, "Hey, you can look up all these old obscure bands." I learned very quickly not to start searches with the image search, because you don't want to image search prolapse.
You
You
run into
just don't.
bands like even Garbage, It's like,
Yeah, no,
dude, Google search Garbage is like, no, Garbage the band, not actual garbage. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've kind of struggled with this personally myself, and I kind of like reached a point where I said to myself, if I'm gonna like figure out a name that's gonna work, I gotta keep it like unique and interesting for myself. So
yeah, because you're going to get sick of saying it if you don't like it. I work for myself, and I've had company names I end up hating. So you got to give it good amount of thought.
I have come up with the music that I kind of produce and I do on SoundCloud. I have the name as Atomic Nahubesh.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I kind of like, it comes from like a word that my dad used to use, but it's Arabic, and then I kind of mixed it with something, But sometimes you gotta just pull the shit straight out of the ass,
Yeah. So Mondacrim Ligo, my new band, it's a phrase in Esperanto. So Esperanto is a language that the European Union, all the countries came together and said, wouldn't it be neat if we had like one language that we all spoke? So they invented this language, Esperanto.
Oh God!
Which of course nobody ever spoke.
Of course not. Like,
so Mondacrim Ligo, apparently it means like international crime gang, but I thought it meant bollock dagger, because that was going to be one of our other choices for a name was Bollock Dagger.
Oh my God. Brilliant.
I've been in some bad bands with bad names, though, really bad.
There have been like, that Joy Division's originally name I think was like Warsaw.
Yeah, Warsaw, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like there was like 5 other bands named Warsaw. I'm like, bro, come on. Like, that is so unoriginal. You just like,
it's a place name. There's a town called Warsaw.
It's in Poland. It's just hilarious.
There's one up north near Manchester.
Really?
As well.
It's called Warsaw?
It's called Warsaw. But
oh my God.
You've got to have some luck or some balls to name yourself after a place. So there's a fantastic band, Portishead. They're named after a town called Portishead. I can't think of any other examples. Has there ever been a band called like London or anything?
No.
I have been to New York by accident.
Have you?
Entirely by accident. Flew over. I mentioned I brought a band over from Massachusetts to tour the UK, and my band was supposed to go back over, but my bandmates at the time were all feckless idiots, so they couldn't get their shit together enough to get a passport. So I was like, well, fuck you guys, I'm just gonna go. And I went with a friend, and he had friends in Virginia who worked in Washington. So we drove down the coast, and we went to Obama's inauguration, his first inauguration. Kind of by accident. We were just staying nearby and woke up in the morning, went, should we go to the inauguration thing? We're like, yeah, we're here, might as well. That was a trip.
Just imagine CNN being like, British Central Intelligence found in the inauguration.
Well, the person we were staying with in Virginia, he'd just quit as the head of CIA for Europe, because Bush got into the second administration, and him and all the senior leadership at the CIA all went, we're out, we're done. So, yeah, I was staying with an ex-CIA person and went to Obama's inauguration. But the reason I ended up going through New York is sat-nav was a relatively new thing here. So, now you just use your cell phone. But you used to have a thing called a TomTom. It's like a little separate device.
Yeah,
so
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I'm
26, but trust me, I'm not. I remember all that shit. Dial up.
Well, you've had the biggest change of any generation, but
I remember the change. It was 2010.
Wow. So I bought a memory card with USA Maps on, and obviously well used to driving around the UK. The trick is never to go too far or too fast, because you'll end up in the sea at some point, because there's not much runoff in
Yeah,
terms
and
of
those tom-toms, when they have
space.
to recalibrate, back in those days, it would take a minute, because you had to go through the satellite. So you had to like if you had to make that right turn, you're like, am I there? Okay, I'm almost there. Okay, I'm turning on my turn signals. It's like 3 miles away.
Well, that's the issue I had is that in the UK, even on the motorway, 3 lanes is as big as it gets, and as busy as it gets. It'd be like, turn left. I had John Cleese doing mine. He's like, turn left in 2 miles. You're like, brilliant. Driving through New York, I was suddenly in like, I might be
10
misremembering
lanes.
because I was going to say because of trauma, but I seem to remember it was 10 lanes, and I'd be on the far right, and it'd be like in 200 yards turn left. You're like, vroom, straight
And
across.
you have to make those quick merges, because all of a sudden, what happens? The 10 lanes starts breaking off. So 2 parts of the lanes go one direction, the other 2 parts go in the other. If you don't pay it, I'm from New York. If you don't pay attention, it takes fucking forever to turn your ass around and like get back where you're supposed to be going.
Oh, I did
I
it
feel
several times. We got stuck in the middle of.
I feel your pain. I
We
feel
got
your
stuck in the
pain.
middle of Inglewood.
New Jersey?
Oh no, that wasn't. I don't know. I've honestly, my brain has wiped some of it.
Inglewood is in New Jersey, so that's right. You could, if you're in Inglewood, you could see the city right across the river. So that's one way of getting to the city.
Probably would have thought I was in New York at that point, but the problem was it was minus 22 Fahrenheit. I don't know what that. Sorry, centigrade. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but fucking cold and foggy.
You said negative 20?
Yeah, 20. I'm going to find out. Well,
No,
when we land,
I know Celsius, but I'm like, that is fucking
I'm sure.
cold.
Again, I might be misremembering, but there was a blizzard.
So
put it that way.
Negative 20 would be something like 1 or 0 degrees Fahrenheit.
Very, 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 very cold. And
very cold.
A massive blizzard that we'd been driving through, like Boston to New York, I don't know, it must be 4 or 5 hours, which already being British, you do not drive that. You almost can't drive for that long.
No, that kind of drive would get you from London to Scotland.
Yeah. So I was just following the sat nav and wasn't paying any attention. I think I went over the George Washington Bridge. I can remember it was like, do you want to avoid tolls? And I was like, yeah, sure. It took me right through the middle of New York. So I've been through New York. All I can remember is like white knuckle terror of like, and my fingernails getting trapped in the steering wheel because I was gripping it so hard. And the friend I was traveling with at the time, other places we'd stayed, we shared a bed because we're both musicians, both in bands. We're just used to that kind of thing. After driving through New York, the next morning we woke up. That's the only morning we woke up and we were actually like embracing each other. Just like at some point in the night, both of us kind of went, I need comfort. But we came through New York and I didn't understand the rules in America, or it's in New York State, for pumping gas. Because here, everywhere you get out, you put your own petrol in. That's what it is.
So New Jersey is one of only 2 states where you cannot pump your own gas. You have to sit in your car and they have to pump the gas for you.
So this guy came over. So blizzard, exhaustion, nighttime, all the stuff. Probably a bit hungover as well. This guy came over to the car and he looked like Hagrid. This guy was a giant. I literally looked down and thought, he is one of the biggest human beings I have ever seen. And he just banged on the window. And we didn't know what the fuck. I was, getting ready to get out of the car. And he banged on the window. And so I like wound down the window a bit. And he was like, how much do you want? And I was like, no, we'll sort it out. And he's like, you can't. I was like, okay. And he's like, pop your bonnet. And at that point, I was like, yes, anything you say. I didn't know he was the guy who pumps gas. I didn't think we were being mugged. I just thought someone was very aggressively trying to help us. And he was like, pop your bonnet. I was like, okay. And he checked all the washer fluid and the oil and stuff as well. And then wound down the window and he was like, oh, you guys are British. That wasn't his accent. He was American, a giant of a man. He was like, you guys are British. Where are you from? And it turns out he'd just spent a year living where my friend lived in Hove, which is near Brighton. And he'd just got British citizenship. So that was his last trip back to the States to earn a bit of money so he could move to England. So he was really excited to meet us. He kind of practically climbed in through the window to trying to give us a hug. And we were so relieved that we tipped him $50 on a $20 tank of gas just because we're just like that having someone that nice after such fucking terrifying driving conditions was just absolutely wonderful. I often think of him. I hope he's doing well.
It's interesting because like New York culture is something complete, and it's the whole state. It's not just the city. Like, you know, if you're from upstate or even like more upstate of, you know, like getting into places like Buffalo or Rochester, which is where, like right next to where Canada is, I kind of like almost can say like it's almost like Northern England culture. You know, where a lot of it is blue collar. You know, we're all working class. You know, a lot of our family members do construction and plumbing and heating and, you know, renovations and all these different things. And when you start to meet other people from different places, especially like when you meet people that like kind of come from like similar backgrounds, you're like they get it, you know, they kind of understand that. And I just, it's not something that's easy that comes to you. You know, you realize that this world fucking sucks. And no one is going to pick you off your britches and clean you off. No one. Like, you want to stay alive? You know, like we were talking about Iggy Pop earlier, right? You know, the secret of what kept Iggy Pop alive is himself. Okay? Like, the only reason why he stayed alive is because he wanted to stay alive.
Yeah, absolutely. David Bowie helped a bit as well.
With his milk and peppers and cocaine.
Oh, yeah. I always thought that's the strangest thing, that period of Iggy Pop's life, he was rescued by probably the worst person that could have rescued him in terms of like substance abuse and whatever. But then, they then lived in Berlin, didn't they? And did cool shit.
David Bowie, I think, is like the greatest example of an artist therapist. Because, yeah, he was an incredible artist, but at the same time, he really was a therapist. Like, he became like somebody that was so like weird and out of the box that people that, you know, kind of felt the same way. They're like, okay, out of all of these famous celebrities, who am I going to talk to? Frank Sinatra or David Bowie? I think I'm going to talk to David Bowie. You know, and John Lennon is a great example of this. Harry Nilsson is a great example of this. Like, there's a lot of influence this man had. I mean, not everybody's like, you know, you were saying earlier, like not everybody's cut out to be a nurse or not everybody's cut out to be a therapist, but sometimes you can be an artist and have a little bit of that twang, as they say.
Good commentators on life would naturally have a high sense of empathy anyway. So, yeah, musicians who write about, well, like Bruce Springsteen, somebody else. I've not really got any interest in meeting famous people. I'm not even really a Bruce Springsteen fan, but I think in a lineup of mega famous people, he'd probably be the one I'd pick to go and have a pint with.
And Eric Clapton.
I'm not so sure about Eric Clapton. He's a bit racist for me.
He's a bit racist, but I just want to see him perform live in his house.
In his house? Wow.
In his house, yeah. Can you imagine? Like, he literally is one of the greatest guitar players of all time. You know, to literally just sit there and watch the man play. You know, not through a video, not through a camera. No, your fucking ass is on his chair, okay? Your butt cheeks are touching the cushions that he probably sat on for the past 15 years.
I'd like to think Eric Clapton could afford a new settee more frequently than every 15 years. He must be doing all right. He must have a few quid.
Honestly, though, I think like he's posh enough. You know, those blokes that are like, this has been my family for years. I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah, so that you're so right. So there's a.
By the way, I'm like one of the few Americans that understand British posh culture because my best friend, like, she grew up in the Jewish community in Manchester, and it's extremely posh. And she's like telling me like how like she's trying to reintroduce herself to like normal culture, and I'm just like, and she's just explaining to me. I'm like, television shows are right, okay. This is what I'm understanding. All the 90s British sitcom television shows, they were all true about posh culture. Every single one. Every single one.
Well, it's like the classic thing. If you see somebody driving like a 90s or an 80s Volvo, they're probably gentry. You know, they've probably got they've got a title. My wife worked for a lord for years. Lord de Saumarez, his name was. Still owns a big part of Jersey, the island of Jersey. And he was the scruffiest human being I think I've ever met. You know, literally like, you know, not quite an extension cord instead of a belt, but not far off. You know, that kind of thing. And this man was an actual lord.
No, but like I feel though there are artists, like, let's be honest, not their personal lives is not so great. I mean, we were talking about earlier, like even John Lennon. Okay, I love his music, and I think he was an incredible artist. He was a terrible human being.
He wasn't a nice man to either his children or his first wife,
No, and
especially.
Like, I mean, it's terrible on how he went out. Like, particularly, I mean, no one should ever go like that. I'm not, but I mean, you run publicity stunts for years. You piss off and harass the U.S. government. Again, I understand, like, they're not the greatest people. Okay, I got that. But you piss off the government that you're living in the country. You know?
What did he do to piss off the government? This is news to me.
So during the 70s, which is a lot of the problems that our country is now still dealing with, we had the Lyndon B. Johnson and Richard Nixon regimes, which basically devastated this country. I mean, to this day, we're still suffering because of their garbage. But a lot of artists at the time that were living here in the States, including John Lennon, were very aggressive towards the way that the government was handling things, particularly even with, you know, like the music scene.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm going to be very honest, and I'm not ashamed to say this. Our government has absolutely been atrocious towards the artist industry for fucking too long. I mean, the amount of abuse and trauma and shit they have caused with CIA operatives, missions.
It's so strange as a non-American when I hear these things about what the CIA got up to. I'm generally like,
they're
right,
still doing it now.
But
They're still doing it now.
I assumed for a long time it was just conspiracy theory stuff.
No, it's real.
It's not. It's not. God, the British government can't be asked. They haven't got the money for that kind of stuff. British government, if they want to mess someone up, they'll just put too many sugars in their tea or something.
You know what's crazy is out here, it's not even about a matter of power anymore. It's a matter of how much money you can make. You know, I was talking with somebody about the other day, like, you would think that the underground scene here would be be kosher, right? You know, it's independent art. No, it's not.
Really?
I had an independent producer on that. He told me he ran into a lot of independent artists and producers that own their own record labels. They were not independent. They were contracted by larger subsidiaries of, like, for example, you know, like larger labels. So what they do here is they have a larger label. What they do is they create like an underground sub label. But you're still a part of a major corporation. You're still under a lengthy contract that you're basically selling your soul to the devil. You know, there's no like. So that's what I was saying, like, earlier. Like, I respect these artists like John Lennon as an example that did stand up to this kind of bullshit. But at the same time, people want to make money, and they're going to make money regardless. And if they can make money off of artists, they're going to do it, even now.
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't think a lot of labels would really give a shit. Well, if they got shareholders, they got to show the shareholders that the investment panned out.
It's too expensive. Think about it. Like, to run it, even with all the technology we have now, to run an independent label is well over $100,000 starting.
That's insane. Well, the thing is, if you're going to sell to America, America's so big. I started a label in the 2006-ish. So I signed a band I absolutely loved, because you have to sign people that you love and you think are
Yeah.
fantastic.
I mean, obviously, otherwise you're
And-
going to run it to the ground.
Yeah, it's not going to be
Right.
much fun otherwise. So I'm trying to think how much that cost me. We had a 50-50 deal. So, everyone, I put in 50%, the band put in 50%, I took out 50%, the band took out 50%. So it was a real good split. And pressing the album cost us, it was only 1,000 copies, because Britain's small, you press 1,000 and see how you go. So 1,000 copies of the album cost £2,000, because they had like a 16-page booklet, because we're idiots. CD this was. PR, we had to pay PR for about 3 months, because if you don't pay for PR, the record shops, well, if you don't pay for PR, the distributors won't distribute your stuff, and the record shops won't buy it. You just have to. So we spent £1,500 a month for that, and a few other things, and we broke even. We broke even on the first 1,000 copies of the album, which is awesome. Until HMV, which is a big chain of records, it's the only chain of record stores left in the UK, they returned 250 copies of the album. And the deal with distributors is it's not sale or return. They buy the album, they've got it, it's in their shop, that's it, the end of the thing, unless they're HMV. So HMV returned 250 copies of the album and bankrupted the label. Literally, just like that, just overnight. But
yeah,
probably was for the best.
I mean, even when we look at, for example, like even non-physical production, when we're looking at, like, for example, distributing through streaming services, right? For example, you have Spotify, Apple Music. There's loads of different platforms. So, you're able to reach now even a larger demographic than, for example, in your case, UK or the United States or Europe. But the issue is, right, who's making the most money? It's the company that you're putting your product on their platform. Spotify only pays a small percentage or portion to the artist. So realistically, the only way that you could really make money is A, royalties, B, merchandise, and promoting. So it I hate to say this, it's one of those things where you have to think with a realistic eye. If you're a shareholder or you're somebody that's an investor, so that means that you're not an artist, you're thinking about the money. You're not thinking about the creativity, because you appreciate the creativity, but that's not what is going to return the 150,000 or 50,000 pounds that you're putting down for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And
right?
And
it's a double-edged sword.
Who and where those investors are is so mysterious. Did you see the Wu-Tang Saga?
Yes.
So it's on Disney.
I saw the first 2 episodes. And then I watched he did a podcast episode with Joe Rogan.
Oh, really?
Who, yes.
RZA? Oh my God! What?
I don't know. No, not RZA. Was it RZA or the other one? But he was talking about, like, they made the series and he kind of broke down a few things too. I mean, I don't know about you. Do you know 10 people that you can bring together right now?
Yeah, but not in that way.
No,
but that thing stressed me out so much. The first few episodes of that, I was like practically hovering above my sofa, just going, oh my, because there is nothing in my life, there's nothing in my lived experience that has any connection, well, to being a crack dealer in the 90s in New York. There's nothing, there's no experience, and I just found it was like stomach churningly stressful watching it, because I don't know anything about that life. So it was educational, but I was just, but I can't even remember why I mentioned it now. Oh, that's it, because the label they get signed to, the one they choose, it is a sub label. So it's a label that's being funded by a bigger label, because the guy who signs them, his whole battle is trying to get the money out of the major label to sign Wu-Tang. And obviously, well, they made a few quid out of it, I imagine. I don't think anyone at Wu-Tang anyone who's involved with Wu-Tang is going to the cupboard and finding no tins of beans or anything. I think they did all right.
Even though they were the early days, they're what you call legacy.
Yeah.
Meaning to the point where, they have the ability to create whatever they want to create. We were talking about earlier, about David Bowie, right? The man was dying of liver disease and cancer, and he writes Black Star.
God, and the fact it comes out like what, a week before he died.
Mhm.
Hey, sorry, Kat. Sorry if anyone's listening, not watching. Kat.
Her name's Twix.
Hello, Twix. I don't know where mine is. She's normally in there's a little cat bed there.
Here she comes.
Oh wow, what a gorgeous cat.
Yeah, listen, she came off the streets. Let me tell you, off the street cats are the best.
Yeah, ours came from a farm, and she lives with us because the family that first took her, first kind of homed her, their kids were terrified of her. She's spicy, but yeah, the character from street cats or farm cats, the character's just different. It's a different thing, and I like it. Our cat is a little shit sometimes, and a lot of the time you just looking at it going, I've lived with cats my whole life, but cats that just come to you the normal way, like someone forgets to spay their pet and go, oh shit, there's kittens now, and so from homes, and they're different if they come from elsewhere.
I think from an artist's perspective, I think that we have a connection to animals where
Why'd you go on?
I think our minds work differently. I think we like the fact that there's something that we don't have to necessarily have to talk with and explain ourselves to. We can just be ourselves, and they kind of they're
showing us their ass
now. They're always there. They always know how to make you feel, like they always know how to make you smile. I found that particularly for myself, that having that around kind of also helps spark your creativity. Sometimes I'll just have her in my lap and I just start humming something, and I'm like, and then later on I'm able to put something together. They're very inspirational. I mean, all kinds of animals: horses, cats, dogs, cows, even goats.
Cats are a lot cheaper to feed than horses. And
yeah, they are a lot cheaper.
The litter box for a horse must be quite a lot larger.
Horses, though, I love being around horses. They are some of the most beautiful animals. They just, I don't know. They're like gentle giants.
They are speaking to horse owners. I'm doing some work with the horse feed company at the moment, and they're so fascinating. No other creature is in humans, in humanity's a part of humanity. Oh God, that's a bad sentence. Horses are quite unique in the relationship that we have with them. I mean, I'm always
Take two, ladies and gentlemen, and
I'm always slightly scared standing next to a horse, but in a sort of a respectful way. I used to have a job years ago where I supported there's a charity near here called Riding for the Disabled. So people with learning disabilities would go ride horses, and it was my job to walk alongside the horse. And it was amazing. You'd get people who were in wheelchairs and couldn't talk, and were quite severely disabled. Strap them to a horse, and I can't even describe what it does. It just does something. It just does something, and the horses probably. I could say the horses don't know, but I think horses have quite a high level of empathy.
They tend to understand humans very well. I remember this farmer. They had a ranch. They had a bunch of horses, and he was a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
And he sometimes would play guitar in the stable, and you could literally see all of the horses just hi, You know, they're
just chilling with it.
yeah, they're just like relaxing. Their just tails are just wagging to the beat.
That's awesome.
But they are very much in tune. And I think that is, if we want to go a little deeper into this, there is something that we do not understand about evolution, which I personally feel that evolution is not necessarily just a change of an individual or a thing. It's more or less a change of connection to what it is. A great example of it is like where we know trees survive due to the mycelium network.
Yeah, it's all talk to each other.
Right. So you have two things that over time have evolved to now integrate with one another. And I feel the same way that when every single time we domesticate animals, all we're doing is connecting ourselves more and more closer to those animals, you know? And sometimes I come off as like being like, you know, that freaking, you know, vegan liberal, you know, screaming the chant of like, don't kill the animals. But I come from a Jewish culture where my brother slaughters animals. And his whole thing is to make sure that you care for the animal, that if you're slaughtering it, that you respect it, that you make sure you do it in a way that it's not in pain. You know, it's again, that is the attitude of us like interconnecting with the world around us. And again, this ties in with music too. It's been a part of our culture for thousands of years. Because over our evolution, we've again interconnected with that as time has progressed.
It's how we warned each other about danger. So like all there's a theory, all fairy tales, you know, Little Red Riding Hood and whatever, they're all stories telling you not to go into the woods. So that would have been really important in medieval times and going right back to, you know, early man. Don't go in the woods. There's stuff in there that'll eat you. But if you don't have that way, you know, that way of communicating danger, then you find a rhythm or find some kind of expression. That's basically, as I understand it, in very simple terms, that's why human beings can talk, and that's why we survived when the other lads didn't do so well. What are they called? Neanderthals. The other lads. I mean, I don't think that's the scientific term.
Hey, we can create our own scientific terms. You know, it's a new dawn.
It's a new dawn. Hey Dave, I am getting a ton of messages from my child who is in town at the moment, so I'm really sorry to bring this to an end because
we can
thoroughly enjoyed this.
Before we wrap this up, do you have any things you wanted to leave off, like any of your social media pages, or you have a website or anything like that?
If you could just link to andrewculture.com and beatmotel.com. So Beat Motel's my zine. Zine, that's how I think of it. It's my podcast, my music podcast, which I think I would love to have you as a guest on.
Sure, we can schedule something.
And Andrew Culture is just where I put all my writing, all my books, and just everything creative I do. So Beat Motel podcast, the concept is we have a theme, and I've got loads ready to go, and we choose 4 songs each and discuss the theme around those songs. So like the last episode we did, the video came out yesterday. It was crate digging discoveries. So me and my guest both choose 4 songs that we found from crate digging and then talk about it. But there's many things. I think it'd be a really fun episode to do.
Sure. With you. Yeah. Let's make it happen.
Cool.
Yes. Well, listen, Andrew, I mean, it's been a pleasure to be talking with you across the pond.
Yeah,
indeed. It's always good to have it in depth and be able to expand on what it means to be an artist in this wonderful, fascinating, insane world. But with that, if you want to check out more of Lost in the Groove, you can find us everywhere at Lost in the Groove Pod. So with that, catch you next one. Peace out, motherfuckers. Ah!